Good afternoon, I'm Adrian Giles. It's Friday, this is Working Lunch, and Yorkshire Water smarting from a proper tongue lashing. A crisis waiting to happen, so says the public inquiry into Yorkshire's summer of discontent.
And I'll be bringing you news of a bigger jackpot than the National Lottery. This one's from National Power, and the rumours are that it could be worth more than £1 billion.
And Rory's in Dundee.
250,000 readers buy this every week. 500,000 buy this. Just two of the very traditional publications still making a lot of money for a very traditional company. DC Thompson's here in Dundee.
And trying to pick the perfect mortgage. We'll be trying to help you. Our expert will be answering your questions. Yorkshire Water had no emergency planning and caused, quote, great distress and anxiety by threatening water cut-offs last summer. The public inquiry into the whole business has just reported, and as Steve Annett reports, no punches were pulled.
The author of today's report, Professor John Uff of King's College London, describes last year's water shortages in Yorkshire as a crisis waiting to happen. He slams Yorkshire Water for leaving too small a safety margin between supply and demand. No new reservoirs had been built in the region since the 1970s, and only 5% of capital spending was going to create new resources. At the same time, Yorkshire Water's estimates of future demand were well off target. They'd predicted that demand would fall while it actually rose. All of that left Yorkshire's water system highly vulnerable to drought, and last year's dry weather quickly revealed the shortcomings in the system, leading to threats of rotor cuts and the introduction of standpipes. A short time ago, Yorkshire Water's new boss described the report's findings as hard-hitting.
I welcome the report, and I'm going to pay very close attention to its findings. I accept that mistakes have been made in the past, and what we now have to do is to learn from them and work hard to rebuild the confidence and trust with our customers.
A number of heads have already rolled at Yorkshire Water, including that of Chief Executive Trevor Newton, the man who claimed at the height of the drought that he hadn't taken a bath for 3 months in order to save water. He's now about to take early retirement. The new management team he leaves behind must, according to today's report, take steps to create a system which can cope with exceptionally dry years. Massive leaks in the system must be plugged, and a new pipeline connection built between Yorkshire and the far soggier county of Northumberland.
A big day then for the consumer's champion on this one, Peter Bowler, campaigns officer at the Pressure Group Water Watch.
Well, we're delighted because it confirms all the criticism that Water Watch, Yorkshire Wildlife Trust and other groups have been making of Yorkshire Water over the past few years.
Now, so, are you going to get yourself an I Told You So t-shirt made then?
Well, we don't want to be too sort of complacent about it. At the end of the day, the reality is that the recommendations in that report need to be implemented. Yorkshire Water were exposed by Uff as having known they had a problem and having failed to act. His words are, it was a crisis waiting to happen. Now, what we need to do now is make sure that Yorkshire Water implement the recommendations. What we're seeing from them at the moment are very polished media performances from their new leadership. What we want is firm action.
Now, the report does praise the employees for managing the crisis with skill and efficiency and effectively cleared the company of creating its own problems through concentrating too much on other activities or through the sale of assets. Would you go along with that?
Oh, yes, indeed. I mean, the individual employees, the poor souls that dig the holes and fix the leaks, they deserve everyone's congratulations because they work very, very hard. I think lions led by donkeys is the sort of expression that most people might use. The problem is that Yorkshire Water Services, yes, clearly hadn't caused a problem by selling off assets. We all knew that. Its investments in other organisations hadn't had an impact. We all knew that. The law says they're not allowed to cross-fertilise the water services business with its diversified investments. But the fact is, within the water services, decisions that should have been taken years previously in terms of securing new supplies were not made. And indeed, they're dealing with the leakage problem, and Uff points out that leakage is roughly equal to the amount of domestic use now. In other words, it's the same amount as ordinary customers use, had not been dealt with. Even worse than that, although they had plans and proposals that they thought were dealing with leakage, rather like they were going overdrawn and counting their overdrawn balance as being in credit and getting their figures doubly wrong.
But credit where it is due. The company paid for this inquiry You'd be the first person jumping up and down saying the inquiry wasn't fair if it hadn't been so hard on the company. The things are going to change now, aren't they?
Well, they've got two choices. They either accept the findings of the report and implement them, or they find Waterwatch and the public of Yorkshire using the details contained in this report, and often an excellent job in terms of assessing the evidence presented to him.
The company... Sorry, go on.
The public of Yorkshire and Waterwatch will hound the company for the next 5 years, if necessary, to make sure that these steps are taken.
The warning from Peter Bowler of Waterwatch. The other business news now. The Birmingham Midshires Building Society has confirmed it's proposed a merger with its Black Country neighbours, the West Bromwich Building Society. And now it's also reported that Prudential might bid for Birmingham Midshires itself. Confused? Well, you will be, I'm sure. Ernest Saunders, the disgraced ex-head of Guinness, is reported to be eyeing up Queen's Park Rangers Football Club. Richard Thompson, the club's owner, has put a £10 million price tag on the club. The team behind the Millennium exhibition at Greenwich have been given another month to raise the £200 million of private sector backing needed. Companies have so far failed to put up that cash to match the £200 million coming out of the National Lottery funds. And George Lucas, the man behind Star Wars, has shaken hands on the biggest deal in cinema history. A £1.3 billion package will make him 3 more science fiction epics. The makers of Pepsi are stumping up the money, which will include lots of space adventure merchandising and all that kind of thing. Nearly 400 workers at Coates Viola's Merseyside factory will clock off for the last time today. The kind of shirts they make for the likes of Marks and Spencer can be made more cheaply overseas. Gary Keown reports.
Like many others before them in the textile trade, workers at Coates Viola's Rainhill factory have lost out to the low-cost manufacturing economies. Shirts and leisure wear made here for Marks and Spencer will in future be provided by the company's workforce in Morocco and Mauritius.
There is a lot really angry because I think they could have done more than what they've done.
Do people feel let down?
I think a majority of them do, yeah, because as you're saying, it's not closing because we've got no orders for anything, it's going abroad.
The girls are very depressed this week. They find it really hard to come in. I mean, you've got people who've done nearly 30 years here. It's like a second home. And we've had quite a few tears already this week, and there'll be more.
We did all we can, the union did all they can, but when they've made their mind up, they've made their mind up.
Hey, now, John, pay bill.
Oh, no. Have a look at these adverts. There's got to be something in here for an old man now.
John Doyle is one of those for whom today's closure couldn't have come at a worse time. At 54, he thinks he'll be left on the scrap heap. The Rainhill plant provides 2 incomes for this household. After today, belts will have to be tightened.
When you're employed, you have a sense of respectability. You can plan for the future. Now, I don't think we can plan a month, 2 months ahead.
The reason they're shutting us down is because it's Morocco, Mauritius, Indonesia. They can make the shirts cheaper there, and they're making more profit for themselves and for the investors.
The closure of the plant has been brought forward nearly 2 months. In reality, there's now little work to be done. Around a quarter of the 380 workers have found new jobs. John and Christine Doyle are not among them. With unemployment in the area higher than the national average, like many of their friends, they'll face an uphill struggle.
Gary Keown on Merseyside. Now, if you're a National Power shareholder, then mind your head, open up your wallet and wait for the windfall. Adam.
Absolutely, listen up. Now, the market here has been generally positive this morning. FTSE up around 8 points for most of the morning. But here is the news. The sound of £1 billion. Yeah, £1 billion doesn't sound like it used to, does it? Now, that may be pouring out of National Power pockets right into the bank accounts of its shareholders. Now, there are reports around that they may be paying out over £1 billion, in fact, to its shareholders through a special dividend, may even stick its head above the mark that TSB put down before its merger with Lloyds, which was the record payout before this. Now, we're going to find out, perhaps even sometime today in the next couple of hours, the actual details of their payout. The clash is actually floating around because the company was barred from taking over Southern Electric, you may remember, and of course now has all of this cash burning holes in its pocket, has to do something with it. The city reckons the most efficient thing to do with it is to put it back into shareholders' pockets. Now, too late, I'm afraid, to be part of that payout. if you want to buy a share this morning, so don't go out and buy one if you're just trying to get in on that deal. Let's take a look at where National Power shares are trading up this morning. 17 pence at 533. What says National here is in fact the National Power partly paid shares. They are trading up 20 pence at 402. British Gas has sent a letter to all shareholders asking them to write to Ofgas to protest against the regulator's proposed controls on prices charged by British Gas's Transco unit. British Gas shares are now trading up 4. And Glaxo Wellcome, hardy day of it. Their shares now trading up 24.5 at 861. Now, the market hasn't paid an awful lot of attention to the BSBR figures this morning. They've come in slightly better, £3.26 billion for April, an improvement on 3.69. But it doesn't leave the Chancellor an awful lot of room to cut interest rates at the moment. So let's take a look at what the FTSE's done. Up 17, better than it was this morning at least, at 3,770. Back to Adrian.
Thank you, Adam. Cripes, what a corker. Let's go to the home of the Beano. Hello, Rory. Enjoying yourself again today, I see.
Yes, I am, Adrian. The Beano, the Dandy, Shout Magazine, My Weekly, The People's Friend, the Sunday Post, the Weekly News, the Dundee Evening Telegraph, the morning paper, the Dundee Courier. All of them come from here, which is the headquarters of DC Thomson in Dundee, employing about 2,000 people. Now, it's a very interesting company, very unusual company, goes back to the last century, always been very traditional, very God-fearing, no sex in the DC Thomson publications, very traditional company. Another remarkable thing is that we're in here at all because it's always been a very private, very reticent company, not welcomed too much attention, but they've welcomed us in today, for which we thank them, and we've taken the opportunity to have a look into every nook and cranny of the Thomson Empire. Now, our first stop's going to be one of Britain's most distinguished publications. It's almost 60 years old. It still sells 250,000 copies a week, the Beano, and these are its headquarters. I'm sure it's going to be a fairly high-tech, modern operation. Quite excited about what we'll find. Well, this is it. This is where the Bash Street Kids, Roger the Dodger, Dennis the Menace, Minnie the Minx, this is where they all come to life. And as you can see, it's not that big an operation, only 5 full-time staff. They're the writers. George, you're writing Dennis the Menace. How are you getting on? How's he doing?
Oh, not so bad. It's halfway through anyway.
So you write a script, and then what happens next?
Script's typed and sent out to the artist, David Sutherland, to draw.
Right, so we've got an artist here, actually, Jim Petrie, who's just come in with his latest versions of Minnie the Minx. Now, how long have you been doing this, Jim?
I've been doing this 35 years.
And how's Minnie changed over that time?
I think she's calmed down a bit, to tell you the truth.
Now, Ewan Kerr's the editor of the Beano. Ewan, what does your job actually involve?
Well, I really have to select what goes into the comic each week. I'm a bit like a football manager. I pick my team. It will be Dennis the Menace, Minnie the Minx, the Bash Street Kids, and the rest can be made up of a pool of characters that we have. We like to freshen the comic up.
What sort of people read the Beano these days, then?
Well, everybody. We aim really between 6 and 12 years of age for our readership, but we find we get letters from university professors, students, armed forces. It's been around for so long that people like to read it just to relive their youth a bit.
Now, you might think some parts of the DC Thomson business are pretty old-fashioned. You couldn't say that about the printing. They're turning out the Dandy this morning, aren't they, Ali?
Yeah.
There he is, the Dandy with Desperate Dan. You're a regular reader. What do you think of it?
Oh, it's an excellent value for money.
You would say that, wouldn't you? Anyway, they've spent £100 million here in recent years on updating the printing operation. They claim it's the most modern in Europe. And they've done all that without going near the bank manager. And that says a lot about some of the rules which have guided this company over the years. Debt, depravity and drunkenness, all frowned upon by the Thomson family, which founded this company over a century ago. Trade unionism is the other great taboo. In a city with a great tradition of organised labour, this has always been a non-union plant. The recipe seems to work. One recent estimate put the Thomson family wealth at over £250 million. Another successful money-spinning part of the DC Thomson Empire, the People's Friend. 1.5 million readers every week. Very traditional mix of stories, knitting patterns, cookery. One important element is the cover, and Hilary here's choosing covers. How do you choose them, Hilary?
We need foreground colour and interest, middle ground colour and interest, and a nice sunny sky, because it's always sunny on the cover of the People's Friend.
Now, this is the craft desk. Gillian here's in charge of cookery. Presumably your readers want pretty traditional stuff.
Not really. They want a mixture. They want things that they can eat in restaurants outside, or things they've discovered on holiday.
Not just mince and tatties.
And not just mince and tatties, definitely not, but they want to be able to do it in their own kitchen in a simple fashion, and that's what we do.
OK, and further on here, we've got Alison, who's in charge of the knitting department. What about your readers? Fairly traditional patterns again?
No, not always. No, they do like something that's traditional, but they do like something that's a challenge and that can test their skills at knitting.
They're prepared to be a bit adventurous, the People's Friend readers.
Definitely.
And this is the first edition of the People's Friend, and 127 years later, here's the latest one. Only about half a dozen editors in all that time, and here's the latest one of them, Sinclair Matheson. Sinclair, still an incredibly traditional publication, romantic stories and so on. How do you compete against, frankly, all the sex and shopping in every other women's magazine?
Well, to some extent, there's been a bit of a reaction by many readers against that kind of publication, which, as you say, is on every shelf. And a lot of readers write to us and say they're quite literally fed up with reading these kind of salacious and overtly sexual stories and so forth. And they prefer now to sit back with a good, honest-to-goodness read of stories, serials, which not only are not bland, they're not bland stories, but they want their emotions to be moved, they want to be angered, they want to be disappointed, they want to be jealous, they want to follow characters that they can identify with in these stories.
Classic romantic stories, where do you get them from?
Well, we get them from writers literally up and down the country. We have a writer in the Orkney Islands, we have writers here in Dundee, we have writers down in Worcestershire, and we have writers on the Isle of Wight. So we get them from all over the country. They come up with the ideas, or we come up with the ideas, and we, as far as serials go, we work together very closely.
You've been here a long time. Have the rules changed about what you can put in a People's Friend story? It's been a very God-fearing company over the years, isn't it?
Well, over the years, yes. And if I can just go back to the very first one, just quickly, if you want, from the very inception, the People's Friend was meant to be fireside reading. Now, these are not my words. These were the words of the first editor. And he went on to say that nothing will be admitted into the columns of the People's Friend that will have the slightest tendency to corrupt the morals of old or young. So that was way back in 1869. So in many cases, nothing really has changed.
Traditional recipe works pretty well. Sinclair, thank you very much. And from the home of DC Thompson, back to Adrian in the studio.
Thank you, Rory. Consuming